Back again today to work on the charging port for the Brumby. So that needs to go into there. I've got 2 holes already and I can't use those 2 holes, so I need to figure out how I'm going to attach this. Goes in from behind, like so. So that seems, it's pushing against something in there, so it seems to want to fit exactly there, so that's good. And it looks like I'll have room for that 1, 2, 3 holes. I could screw straight into the plastic with a self-tapping screw, but I've decided to use the holes, even though it's a bit more difficult, to reuse the original Brumby bolts. So I found these bolts that I took out of the Brumby somewhere when I've been working on it. They fit through there nicely. I think they'll be fine, which means I need to figure out exactly where the holes go. I've looked up and found out what the standard standard wire colours are in Australia. I'll use the same for this. So I'm going to wire it up 3-phase, even though I'm only going to be using single phase to start with, which will mean I'll be able to put in a second charger on a different phase if I want to at a later stage. These funny little solder cup connectors, I'll just strip off that much. So I've got these in there. I ended up tinning them with the soldering iron and then putting them in with the gas, finishing them off with the gas. So they go in there. They are keyed, which means that each one needs to be around a certain way to go in. Now I've got my screws ready to put in. So this socket has red and green lights up the top, and I'd like to use those. So there's just holes in the back. You can see the red and green coming through there. So what I've done is I've bought these little white LEDs, and they should just sit in there like so. So what that means is I need to wire them up with a resistor. So I've calculated that a 1K resistor should be fine in there. So I'll solder that in line, put it all underneath some heat shrink, put that in under the spot there, and there's 2 of them, so I'll take it with these 4 core bit of telephone wire back to the EVCC underneath the car. So I've soldered up my 2 LEDs. They fit in there like so. They sort of push down in those little slots, so there is a clamp can go on top of there. I may or may not put that on there. I've got a feeling it didn't fit terribly well in the Brumby with that on there. But anyway, this wire I think can poke in through that hole. There's a hole there with a little bit of silicone in. It comes underneath. If I push it in through there, then it comes out nicely and can go down here. I'll need to put some kind of conduit on here. I've positioned these LEDs in here, so it's white LEDs that shine through the green and red windows there, with the idea that I'll be able to display certain things off the EVCC. And I've been looking in the EVCC user manual and found it's not going to work quite as I thought it was going to. So I thought I'll just take you through it, what's going on and what I have to do to change it. So in the EVCC, we have out 1, out 2, and out 3. It's hard to say. And they work a bit differently. Out 1, when it's active, provides 12 volts, and when it's inactive, it's disconnected. Out 2 and 3 connect to 0 volts, connect to ground when they're active, and they're disconnected when they're not active. So out 1, what I'm going to do is, we've got 3 outputs. You can assign any of the different functions within the EVCC, of the different outputs can be assigned to any of the 3. I've picked 3 outputs that I want to use. And so for out 1, what I've decided, I've got an LED already in the car that I used to use for my charging light. So it's a nice fat red LED, and it is connected to earth via a resistor. And so there's the LED, connected to earth via resistor. So that's very simple, just connect it to out 1. When out 1 is active, it will light the LED. The task I'm going to use that one for is to reproduce, there's a little LED, if you remember, on the EVCC that flashes. It's got all sorts of different reasons it flashes. It flashes different ways for different codes. So to keep an eye on what's going on the EVCC, that's a good idea to have that where I can see it. I can't see it underneath the car. Shouldn't use that day to day. That would just be for troubleshooting, probably. Out 2 and out 3, the way that I've wired these in here at the moment, so they connected to earth when they're active. So the way that I've done it is to do a similar thing through a resistor, LED from 12 volts. So that is going to light up when it's active. Out 2 I've decided to use for charge light. So the EVCC will activate this when the charger is charging, and when it's not charging, it goes high impedance disconnected, which means the LED will turn off when it's not active, turn on when it is active. Out 3 I've wired up the same as that, but I've just worked out that the EVCC doesn't use it as I thought. So out 3 I'm going to use for an indication that we're plugged into this socket. So when you plug into this socket, the EVCC has a condition where it actually activates the other way around. So it activates when you're not plugged in. Now so what that means is this light would only light when you're not plugged in and would turn off when you're plugged in, which is the other way around. So I want a light that lights when I am plugged in. So you plug it in, the light comes on, then your charge light comes on once you start charging. Charge light goes off, this one's still lit, and that would be the red one. So I have the charge as the green and the connected as the red. So to reverse that logic, I did wonder, why would they have it that way around? Why would they have it active when you're not plugged in? And I looked at the difference between this version and the previous version of the EVCC, and it was described a bit better on the previous version. It was described as a ready-to-drive light, or ready-to-drive contact. So you could put in a contactor, a relay in your car to stop you driving if you're plugged in. And so if you're ready to drive, it closes. If you're not ready to drive when you're plugged in, it's open. Anyway, I've got to reverse it. So that's how it's wired up at the moment. I'm going to change it so that it's this way around. And that will go to earth. So that's lit all the time. But then if I put this one up to here, when this goes to earth, the power will run down through there. And when it's open, then the power will run down through there. So that's reversed my logic there. The only problem with this is that there will be power running all the time through this. So this now won't turn off. With a 1K resistor, it's about 12 milliamps. So I think I can wear that. Now I've got to go and make the changes in here. This looked all very neat, and it's a pity that I've got to do it now, but better to do it now than to think about it every time I plug it in for the rest of the life of the car. Have this hooked up to 12 volts now. Now we've got our blue wire is always negative, the red wire is always positive, and the other two connect to the out 1 and out 2. So out 2 is black. And so if we connect, and so this is either disconnected or connected to earth. So that's out 2. And if we go to out 1, which is white, do the same thing, then we turn off. So we plug in and then we start charging. Then finish charging and then unplug. I think I'm ready to put this in. So this got a good rubber boot on the back of here. I like this. I've used the grey conduit so that it's not orange. And through here I've got the 3-phase wiring, which is inside that orange one, and then the 2 signals, and then in that grey one there's 4 lines there for the LEDs. Now I figured out that this grey conduit, it doesn't have very far to go. It's just got to go underneath the tray and into my junction box. Goes under there. There's a hole in exactly the right place in the Brumby for some reason. Something to do with the fuel system, I reckon. So those are certainly longer than I would have hoped for. They don't look as good as they might have. That one I've put in round that way, so that one looks better. This seems quite sturdy with just the 3. I was wondering whether the 3 would be enough. Interesting, if I reach around and move the back of this, you can see those pins move in there. I was playing with that before. It seems to be just the way it's made. Fair enough. Hopefully it's okay. This is my LED that I was talking about before that I used to have for charging. So I'll now have this LED plus those 2. Here's the junction box now. I've wired everything in, I think. So I've got our DC here, we have a DC coming in here. That's something I need to wire in once I'm under the car. 3 lots of DC out. Then the AC will come in here. And then the one AC out to the charger. So that's the charger waterproof connector there. And then the other one out through this little socket here to power the heaters in the car. So that's a low current socket there. Doesn't need to be very much power through that one. I've put this in here as a blanking just because this gland isn't used at the moment. The idea of this is for if I want to put in my smaller charger, I can put it in there. I can run the smaller charger off this same phase. So this charger will use 15 amps. The cable coming in can probably support maybe 25 or so, and this older charger is 6 amps, so that would be enough off that. The cable coming in I don't think would take the whole 32 amps of an entire phase, so I don't think I could put another 15 amp charger on there. I'd need to do that on a different phase. This one coming in is going to be 3 phase. I'm just going to wire in the single phase, the other 2 wires will be left unconnected.